Everyone, so the Los Angeles Clippers are an absolute mess. They are 0-4 with James Harden. They are 0-5 with the beginning of their losing streak coming at the hands of the Lakers. Chef kiss, you gotta love it. But most of their issues is James Harden. And it's just not working, and I don't see it working, and I don't think anybody really saw this working well. I talked about it heavily that I thought if the Clippers went and got James Harden that they would actually be worse, and so far they have. Now, if they figure it out, again, big if, then they have the potential to be absolutely scary. But the reality is, the only way I see it actually working out is one of two ways. The unfortunate way would be one of Paul George or Kawhi Leonard go down. If one of them miss significant time injury-wise, then I think it kind of balances things out. Obviously, you don't want anyone to get hurt, but Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, you can kind of clock them in for missing X amount of games every year. Something that, you can pretty much bet the house on, right? Or at least the last few years that's been the case. So like, for example, if a Paul George were to miss like 20 games, well, now it's like you move Russ to the bench as James Harden, it's Kawhi Leonard. I think that now it's a little more balanced. James Harden can kind of be him a little more and allow him to kind of just operate the way that he wants to operate. And I do think, I don't know how good it will look, but I do think it'll look better than it has been. I think the second option, which is the least favorable probably for the Clippers, is you got to trade one of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, right? I don't see them making this work with Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. And yes, maybe you could waive or buy out Russell Westbrook. I don't really like that idea. I think you should try to get him to come off the bench. I think he's been really good for the Clippers. But even if you were to buy him out, I still think a lot of the clashing is going to come from Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden. I just don't think they mesh well together. Kawhi Leonard is at times a complete black hole when he gets the basketball. You're not getting it back. Paul George, he's a guy that is more willing to pass and make plays at times, but still, he wants to get his shot attempts. So, I mean, you're talking about between these two guys alone, like 40 shots attempts per game. And that's just like minimum. At times, Kawhi will take 25 to 30 plus shots. Paul George, if he's hot and feeling it, he's going to do the same. And I don't see this working. And all of these guys are free agents. Are the Clippers really going to just let everybody go and let everybody walk? They can't. They have no future. They traded it all away. And so the other alternative would be you bring everybody back. Why? I mean, I understand the arena aspect of it. You're getting a new arena, but people aren't going to care that you have stars if you're not winning any games and you're just a play-in team or missing the playoffs entirely. Right? Yes, it's great to have the stars to kind of back up a new arena, but you need to win games, right? Like Golden State, they got a new arena and they had star power, but they were also really good, coming off of championships and stuff. So, like, that's a big difference. So, more likely than not, they're going to end up having to trade one of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I don't see them trading James Harden. I don't think that they're going to buy out James Harden. I've seen people throw that out. It's a fun idea, but I don't see them doing that after giving up, which they didn't give up a ton, but they still gave stuff up. I don't see them just letting James Harden go. You already hear all the reports and murmurs of Kawhi Leonard being unhappy and he being close to potentially requesting a trade that he may end up wanting out. So I think that if one of these two were to get on the trade block, which Paul George, by the way, the Clippers already were shopping him this offseason, and the New York Knicks had the opportunity to trade for him. They just thought it was too much given his injury history and stuff like that, which is going to be a big problem for the Clippers. You're not going to get the value for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard that they would expect, because neither of these guys can stay healthy, for one, and two, both of these guys are free agents. So it's not a Toronto situation where it's like, oh, we can get Kawhi Leonard and that means we're going to win an NBA championship. No, it's like you could get Kawhi Leonard, but if he can't stay healthy, then you basically traded for a guy that's not even going to play. Or same thing with a Paul George. That's a real question mark, right? So in reality, if they do trade him, it's probably not going to be a lot. They trade either of these guys, they're going to have to come down on the price sooner rather than later. And when I did the watch-along stream and the post-game stream, a lot of people brought up, like, hey, if Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were to be available, what do I think about them potentially coming to Lakers, about the Lakers potentially making a trade for either of them? So I wanted to talk about it. And of course, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions, so let me know down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, turn on bell notifications. So we'll start with Kawhi Leonard, right? So either of these guys, I do believe could make sense for the Lakers, and I could see either of these guys actually pushing to go to the Lakers. One, they're already in LA, so all they got to do is move next door. Two, both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are both Laker guys. Both of those guys at points in their career were headed to the Lakers, especially Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard was going to sign with the Lakers if the Clippers weren't able to get Paul George. Well, the Clippers ended up getting Paul George, and thus he goes to the Clippers. Otherwise, he was a Laker, right? So Kawhi Leonard, if Kawhi stays healthy, the Lakers probably win the NBA championship, because a trio of Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James, along with all of the depth that they have, you're not beating that team. You're just not. Again, if Kawhi Leonard is healthy, LeBron is healthy, and Anthony Davis is healthy, those are real questions, right? Like, those are all things that are big question marks. But if those three guys are healthy, right? Like, let's say you trade Rui, D'Lo, and like a first for Kawhi, or a first and a pick swap or something like that, right? And you end up unloading that, and there you go. That's the deal. Or maybe you get a third team. Whatever the trade turns out to be, the Lakers aren't going to have to sell the farm, right? So you would still have basically a starting five of like Austin Reeves, Kawhi Leonard, Jared Vanderbilt, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. That is the best defensive team in the league. You have three go-to just scorers and guys down the stretch. You have Kawhi Leonard and his ability. He's not the clamps that he once was, but he's still good enough defensively, and he still can go and give you 30 plus on any given night. He still can hit big shots down the stretch. And I do think him being the third option, same thing with Paul George, who we're going to touch on here in a minute, but I do think Kawhi being he doesn't have to be the third option, quote unquote, right? Like LeBron, I think, would defer a little bit. AD, I think, would defer a little bit. I think Kawhi would get the opportunity, but he wouldn't have the workload and wouldn't have to, like, you could manage him better than any of the other destinations he's been at, right? More so than the Spurs, where he was the guy, Toronto, where he was the guy, and then the Clippers, where he is the guy for the Clippers, right? Where with the Lakers, he would be one of three guys, so he could take nights off. He could do the things that you need him to do. If he does get like a little nagging injury, you don't have to rush him back like you would for the Clippers, and the Lakers would be able to weather the storm without Kawhi. So the idea would be you kind of just manage him throughout the course of the regular season. You go into the playoffs. If he's healthy, LeBron and AD are healthy with the rest of this team, you're winning the NBA championship. That's the idea. Kawhi also, same thing with Paul George. Again, we'll touch on him in a minute. Kawhi fixes a lot of the Lakers' issues, right? Over the top shooting, a perimeter defense, a go-to scorer, clutch down the stretch, like three-point shooting, everything that the Lakers need. Kawhi solves a lot of it. He doesn't solve like the center issues and stuff like that, but he does fix and resolve a lot for the Lakers. So if the Lakers could get Kawhi Leonard, I absolutely would take the chance, right? Because again, you're probably not going to have to give up too much. It's an upgrade. It's definitely, it's not a low risk, high reward. It's kind of like a mid risk, high reward, right? Because you are giving up something. You're not getting him for like a vet minimum. But the good thing is that if it doesn't work out, he's a free agent and you can just let him go, right? Or re-sign him to a smaller deal or whatever. But personally, and this is where Paul George comes in, I would rather have Paul George. That's just me personally. Paul George has been the better defender. He's the better difficult shot maker. He's been clutch. I know there's the concern about the playoff P issues, but he would be the third guy. Also, he is more willing to be a playmaker. He's more willing to play within the flow of the offense. I think he would fit better with LeBron and AD. I think he'd also be willing to sacrifice more. And the fact that he's been healthier, I think, is the biggest reason, right? That's the biggest, like, okay, I'd rather have PG. And then a lot of the same stuff with Kawhi, you can say about Paul George. He wouldn't have as much of a workload as he has in other places. If he does get a little nagging injury, he doesn't have to rush back and immediately return from that injury. He can kind of take his time and pace himself, and then the Lakers can weather the storm. And again, if you get Paul George, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis healthy in the playoffs, you're probably winning the NBA championship. Because, once again, you'd have a starting five of Austin Reeves, Paul George, Jared Vanderbilt, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. You're the best defensive team in the league, and you're going to be very good offensively. You get the three-point shooting from Paul George, the over-the-top shooting from Paul George. You get more creative offense from Paul George. You get the ability to get to the rim better with Paul George. He's a little more explosive. Like, you just get more versatility, I think, with Paul George than you do with Kawhi Leonard. Not that Kawhi is a slouch by any reason. And look, Paul George is, again, a guy that wanted to be a Laker, that was going to the Lakers, and he got in his feelings. And look, if he didn't get in his feelings, he would have been a Laker, right? He was upset that the Lakers didn't actually trade for him, that they didn't trade the picks, which I believe turned out to be Brandon Ingram, right? They wanted him, Paul George wanted them to trade for him. But from a Lakers standpoint, it made no sense. Right? He was a free agent. The Lakers had the cap space. Why would you go and give up a bunch of assets to go get Paul George when you're saving those assets to go and maybe get Paul George in free agency and then trade for another piece, which would have been Anthony Davis? Right? Because Anthony Davis still would have wanted out, and he still would have wanted to go to LA, and he still probably would have wanted to go to LA with Paul George and LeBron James. So the Lakers could have landed Paul George, and they could have landed Anthony Davis down the line. So Paul George probably has an NBA championship, maybe even several. So the Lakers and Paul George is one of those situations where it's like, it's kind of like what would have happened, right? But again, both of these guys are guys that had the opportunity to come to Lakers, and they decided to team up with each other rather than going to Lakers. But Paul George is another guy that I could absolutely see, if he becomes available, saying, I want to go to the Lakers. Send me to the Lakers. Right? Like, you already shot me in the offseason. If Kawhi wants to leave, then do I really want to be here? Like, if he's going to leave, then I think that that's the case. And I think if the Clippers were to trade any of them, it probably would be Paul George, which I think is the mistake. I think they should trade Kawhi Leonard and keep Paul George, because, again, I think Paul George is more willing to sacrifice next to a James Harden or even a Russell Westbrook, things like that, than a Kawhi Leonard. And he's been more reliable and all the things that I talked about with the Lakers. But the Clippers aren't known for making the best decisions, as you see with the James Harden thing. So I do think that they'll trade Paul George if they come to trade for either of them. And I could see either of those two saying, hey, I want to go to Lakers. I'm already in LA. Send me next door. Get what you can for me, right? Let's work this out so I can go to the Lakers. And again, the Lakers could give up one of their young guys, go get a first round, maybe a pick swap, D'Lo and Rui. Boom, there you go. Again, if you win an NBA championship, no one's gonna care, right? No one's gonna be like, oh man, and I get the concerns. There's definitely the concerns of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's health. But if you can get them, you go get them. You just roll the dice. Don't gamble, you can't win, right? Because if they are healthy come playoff time, you win the championship. Who's beating that team? Who's beating Paul George, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis with all of the depth that we have? And I know our depth has looked a little lackluster at times and has struggled and all that stuff. Well, now you have Paul George to also help you, or a Kawhi Leonard to help you rely on. If you can get either of these guys, you go do it. The Lakers would be, I just believe that they would be the best team in the league. Like, far and away, right? LeBron wouldn't have to do as much. AD wouldn't have to do as much. The three of them can kind of manage each other, whether it's with Kawhi or whether it's with Paul George. They could kind of alternate days off and rest, and you could load manage. You could do all the things that you need to do for these guys and still always maintain like 2 stars, and they would match up seamlessly against everybody. Because now, let's say you do play a team like the Phoenix Suns, right? Well, now you could throw Jared Vanderbilt on, a Devin Booker, and then throw Paul George on Kevin Durant, or vice versa, and then throw whoever Or you could go with like a Cam Reddish or whatever in the starting unit because you got Paul George for the offensive output. You'd get to better starts if you wanted to. I mean, you could make LeBron play point guard or just go big, right? Put Cam Reddish I'd put him on Bradley Beal. Put Cam Reddish on Bradley Beal. Put Paul George on Devin Booker or KD, and put Vanderbilt on the other, whichever one Paul George is. And same thing with Kawhi. Do the exact same thing, right? And now you match up beautifully, defensively, all that stuff. You play the Celtics in the finals, who they currently look like, in my opinion, one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. You could throw Kawhi Leonard or Paul George on Jason Tatum, throw Jared Vanderbilt on Jaylen Brown, or vice versa, whatever. Throw a Cam Reddish on a Drew Holiday. Anthony Davis can slow down Porzingis. And then, you have LeBron. You're good. You are in great shape, right? So if you can get one of these two, you go get these two. Because who else are you going to get? Don't get me wrong. If Kyrie becomes available, he makes a lot of sense. But Paul George and Kawhi Leonard healthy, because there's a lot of risk and concerns with Kyrie. But if Paul George or Kawhi are healthy, they're better fits on both sides of the basketball than Kyrie is, right? And same thing like DeMar DeRozan, who I think is most likely to be a Laker out of any of the stars. If you can get DeMar DeRozan, that's great. I do think DeMar helps a lot. But if you can get Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, you get them over DeMar DeRozan. Because again, if it works and they're healthy, my only concern would just be health, especially with Paul George. Because I think Paul George will do whatever it takes to win, right? Kawhi, he's kind of always only played one way, right? Paul George is usually the guy that we've seen make the sacrifices everywhere he's gone. And I think he's a little more team, right? So he's the guy that I would rather have personally. And I just think they win the chip. Seriously. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Would you want either of these guys? Again, just a fun video. Nothing crazy. Don't take it too serious. But it is something that I wouldn't be shocked if it did happen. But again, love to hear your thoughts and opinions, however you feel. Either way, down in the comments below. Which guy would you rather have? Kawhi, Paul George? Let me know. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.